Next we have Commissioner of Revenue Office and Taxes. These questions were sent to Ms. Tiller and she provided the answers. What would be the assessment benefits from changing from 6 years to 4 years for a reassessment? The advantages would be more cost effective, less public outcry due to less change over time, possibility of missing bubbles in the real estate market or avoiding drastic changes in value. Some disadvantages: property values not reflecting the market value. This could result in property owners being unfairly assessed. More opportunity for missed structures due to property owners building without a permit. Data integrity issues stemming from a longer amount of time passing before this information is looked at. Possibility of more drastic changes in value if values fluctuate significantly during the lapse time between reassessments. Advantages versus disadvantages of an in-house assessor. The advantages would be better handling of the data and more knowledgeable about the market, more control over the process. Disadvantages: less cost effective in most cases. The county takes on the burden of public outcry. The county has less control of their information and data, and the county has less control over public relations. Land use classification versus the current method. Advantages: qualifying control uses of the land does not apply to residents. Less tax liability to the landowner as long as within the land use program. Disadvantages: refer to Virginia Code 58.1-3237. It's complex. There's rollback taxes come into calculation for the land use difference once removed from land use. This has been looked at by Scott County in the past. I would suggest a committee and more research study to have a more complete understanding of land use. And personal property tax: when is Kelly Blue Book updated for purposes of vehicle valuations? Scott County has subscribed to the NADA, which is now J.D. Power. We always use the valuations listed in the January edition of the tax year being processed. And note, we do not have this option directly this year as it's not being offered by J.D. Power. We are speaking with a couple of vendors to weigh the best option for this service for 2024. Regardless, there will be a higher fee per vehicle being valued since we can't go directly to J.D. Power. Interdepartmental communication: suggestions on improving communications and working relationships between the Treasurer, Commissioner of Revenue, and School Board. My suggestion would be to respect the independence of the Treasurer and Commissioner of Revenue. These positions are elected officials. They don't have to answer to the Board of Supervisors. There is a lot of funding that is mandated, which means the county is required to pay, and they have the sole responsibilities for their offices and staff. I know sometimes they get a lot of heat from the Board of Supervisors, but in the end they do run their own offices the way they feel is the best. A joint meeting with the members of the school board may help improve communication with the school system. We are mandated to pay a local match, and the state does tell us that amount based on the local enrollment. I feel like myself and Mr. Ferguson have a good working relationship. The county and school system have central purchasing and central accounting department. And what this means is that the county office processes all school system payroll and all school system purchase orders and checks for bill payment. The staff with the county and the staff at the school system have a good working relationship. The school system staff are in and out on a daily basis, and they have a good working relationship with our county staff. PSA versus Scott County roles: the Board of Supervisors appoint members to the PSA board. The PSA board oversees the PSA director, and they have the responsibility for operating water and sewer infrastructure in the county. The PSA director does give a quarterly update to the Board of Supervisors, and to my knowledge, we don't have any communication issues between myself and Mr. Dishman.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Going back to schools, do you have any idea on the services that Scott County provides to the school system that Scott County is paying for?
I did some quick calculations. We have 3 staff members that do a lot of work with the school system, from running payroll to doing their checks each month. And I've estimated that to be around $43,000 with their estimates to me on the time that is spent on school system related items. We also have 39 dumpsters that are at 16 different school sites, including Head Start and the school bus garage. Back in 2018, when we did our waste management proposal, those calculated to a cost of around $120,000 if they were picked up the same throughout the year. But looking at that, in the summer months, they're not there every day. So my guess would probably be about $150,000 when you take summer into consideration of just what, we provide to them just in a couple of services like that. As far as external communication, what procedures are followed within each department when receiving resident phone calls and providing follow-up? When we receive a call, we have a system, where you go by departments. You may get a message from somebody. If it's not the correct department, we have the option to forward that to someone else. Or if it's something that we can't answer, we can send it to whoever can answer that question. We'll try to gather as much information as we can and provide them with a resolution or a referral to another department if it's outside the county. A lot of times, personally, I'll have to get a name, phone number, and, if I can't answer their question, find out an answer and get back to them. So there is follow-up involved from the staff member and the caller. What concerns have you all received about this? A
lot of people said that they call in, never hear from anybody.
Is it the county or a constitutional officer?
I would say most of the county, but
Okay.
I'm sure it's both.
Okay.
One area is animal control. What's the policy on animal control? Somebody call in about the timing of the response.
All I can tell you, Mr. Skeen, is what I've found in the past, and I've talked to the animal control officer about talking to people. A lot of times he'll get a call about an issue or a complaint. He'll go check on it and either resolve the situation or do what he can do as an animal control officer. But he hasn't called the complainant back to let him know what he's been doing. So the circumstances being, I'll get a call from someone saying the animal control officer I gave him this complaint and he never went out and looked at it. Well, I'll call him immediately after I get off the phone and he said, yeah, we did this, and this. And so I'll call the person back and say, this is what he's been doing. And I've spoke with him about calling that complainant back and let them know, even though it might be a simple issue. It might be a stray dog that he found the owner of and gave it back to, and no charges, no problem, but still to let those people know that you did that. So it's not that the situations or the complaint is not being taken care of. It's a communication problem that we're working on.
Is it just him that's working, that's going to these calls?
The litter control officer that I mentioned earlier and our animal control officer are cross-trained in that they back each other up.
Okay, so they are the only two?
They're the only two.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, there's a lot of the animal laws are state laws. So a town police officer could actually enforce that in the town, or a deputy could enforce it, but that's usually not in their scope. So usually it's one of those two.
I would suggest with the board's approval, it's just reinforced maybe through a memo to people that report to you.
Yeah, Bill put this together so we could share that with all the staff. This would be the proper communication chain. what to do with calls.
I was gonna ask you, Bill, does animal control just work 8 hours a day, or what kind of shifts does he have? If he has to go out later of the night or whatever.
Animal control and the litter control officer work 4 tens, and they alternate that off day, so one of them's on. So they're, if one of them's off Monday, one guy's on, but they're working 10-hour days. And if they get a call out, they'll go out if it's an emergency. It needs to be emergency. We'll get calls and we'll have people call in aggravated that animal control didn't come last night to get the dog in your yard. Well, a dog in your yard is not an emergency. But if a dog is trying to bite you or is killing your cows or something like that, they'll come out. If it's in the act of it. You know, and he uses his discretion on that. If you call and say, this dog was chasing my sheep 2 hours ago, you know, he'll ask, is it killing your sheep right now? And if it's not, he may not come out that night. He may go take a look and try to find out whose dog it was or the situation next day.
What they start like 8 o'clock in the mornings to 10 o'clock, or for 10 hours a day, is that?
Yeah, it's 10 hours a day, 7 to 4, something like that.
How do you ever get a hold of them, call 911 or?
Mm-hmm. You can call 911 and they'll dispatch them. They have, I think it's 95 and 96, and they do that all the time.
Wrong answer.
Huh?
Wrong answer. I've tried it. I had a pig in my yard one day,
Uh-huh.
and he rooted my yard up.
Okay.
Lawnmower wouldn't go through it. Drove around, here comes a pig out of the shed. Runs down through there. I call 911. They tell me they're busy at the time. I'm here, they are. They're after somebody running through the meeting strip at Duffield. I agree they is busy. They said, nothing we can do about it. I said, if I have a cow out in the road, there'll be a county deputy or a state man there in less than 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I'll agree. They said, well, we'll call you back.
This is the dispatch?
Dispatch, 911, okay? I waited from 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock at night for a call back. I think I sure waited long enough. I called them back and said, well, we'll send him out in the morning. Well, I did miss him. He did call, and very nice fella. And then I called him back and I missed him, but he did show up. They did come down there. And they found the pig, and he tore another yard up in another place around the spring. But I believe we need a better communication. It wasn't his fault. I'm gonna blame it on the deputies or the 911 system that didn't want to contact him.
Well, I don't know what was going on in 911 that day. I'm sure they might vet calls on what might be going on. But normally, you can call 911, and usually that should be an emergency if you're calling 911 to get animal control out.
If you call the sheriff's department, you still end up with 911 every time I've ever done it.
But you can also call down at the animal shelter.
It was 6 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on that day. I know normal procedure, if you have an emergency, you call 911, they'll dispatch animal control. Or they may text him your number.
Right.
You know, it may text him your number and him give you a call, and he'll talk to you about the pig, and if he'll use his discretion whether he thinks that's an emergency to come out after hours, or I'll come and look at it next morning, and we'll try to find out whose pig that is, and help you with the situation. You know, it don't always flow as smooth as we want it to,
Well, I
but,
mean,
but that's the process,
that's just one of the
yeah.
things I encountered a few months ago.
Okay.
Next, Mr. Kilgore stepped out. We'll see if he steps back in. We'll go to social services. These responses were provided by Ms. Mullins, the Director of Social Services. What is the working relationship between social services and Scott County? The Department of Social Services has an excellent relationship with the County Administrator's Office, and I will agree with that. We don't have any communication issues. How are foster parents and children monitored, including communications? The provision of foster care services is based on state and federal regulations and monitored for compliance by both state and federal monitoring. Foster parents are approved through a detailed approval process, including a family assessment, background checks, home inspection, and training. The monitoring of a foster home is at a minimum of a quarterly visit in the home, regardless of a child being placed in the home. Monitoring is more frequent during the times a child is placed in the home. All children in foster care must have a monthly contact by their caseworker, regardless of where the child is placed. However, depending on the needs of the child, contact could be daily or weekly. Communications are not monitored unless there is a safety concern that would warrant monitoring communications. We strive to provide children in care with as much normalcy as possible. Children in care typically have supervised visitation with their biological parents, which allows their communications with their parents to be monitored unless the case progresses to unsupervised visitation. The degree of communications which are monitored are on a case-by-case basis and based on the assessment of the child's safety. Vehicle allocation and usage. The Department of Social Services is provided an operating budget from the state to administer the agency. This includes all operating expenses, including vehicles. The director, with the local board's approval, determines when vehicles are purchased based on the availability of funds within the admin budget. The purchase of vehicles is managed to maintain a safe and dependable fleet of vehicles, rotating older vehicles out of the fleet as they reach high mileage and develop maintenance concerns. The vehicles are used for all agency travel within the county, as well as statewide and out-of-state travel. There are designated vehicles allocated to specific units within the department. For example, the department has specific vehicles for Child Protective Services on call equipped with police radios and available 24 hours a day for emergency response. The department has other vehicles for use by all staff, and these vehicles are signed out by the individual staff member using the vehicle. Do you have any questions for Ms. Mullins? Were those what you were looking for? Okay. Next, we'll do the Economic Development Department, and those answers are attached in the back of your packet. These responses were by Mr. Kilgore. Over the last 5 years, what tools are working and not working when recruiting new prospects? The items that continue to work on recruiting are the continued focus on our regional economic development partners who supplies leads, having an existing industrial manufacturing building, and having available publicly owned land. Experienced projects die because the owner is not wanting to sell or is priced way out of range for the company to consider. Number 2, what is the county's role in identifying potential prospects? We acquire prospects a number of ways. The projects come directly to us, the locality, and we work these prospects and have regional and state organizations that we can involve as well. The prospects can also come through our regional economic development organizations or the utility providers. Prospects can also come through the State Economic Development Organization, VEDP. Regional and state organizations have specific targets that they chase and participate in events surrounding those target industries. What is the vetting process for new prospects? The projects are vetted through the regional authority and the state in most cases. On new startup companies looking to locate, the state requires financials and a business plan. Explain the working relationship between the EDA and the Scott County Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors appoints the EDA board, and the EDA works to attract industry business to the county. The EDA meets monthly and reviews projects, and also the director presents quarterly to the Board of Supervisors. How does property ownership get designated by EDA versus Scott County? The Board of Supervisors has transferred ownership in the past in order to develop that property for economic development purposes. A good example of that is the Tech Park in Duffield. Which properties currently under the EDA and Scott County control are not producing revenue? Counties in the state have property that is acquired over time and developed utilizing public resources. These sites and buildings are utilized to entice development and make it quicker for a company to locate. The time frame for business to start in a locality has become shorter and shorter as one of the company priorities is usually sped to market. Revenue is produced a number of ways: by taxes on property, new jobs for the property, and new private investment in county property. What does the Riverside property include? Buildings and land, the total acreage. The total acreage of the Riverside property is 99 acres. That includes 2 buildings adjacent to US 23 and the garages next to Weber City Discount Tire. What is the status of the Riverside property? We continue to market that as a potential housing site, and we also continue to market the existing building. In 2023, at least 3 different companies visited the building. We continue to have other interest in the housing and are working with our engineer with an RFP to send out potentials after the January EDA meeting. What is the Riverside agreement? That was answered during John's presentation earlier today. Does the Riverside property create any revenue or expenses for Scott County taxpayers? The EDA has been able to get an additional $5 million in grant funding for the site and also constructed a building that was leased for job creation. The company moved out during COVID, and so far there's not a new tenant. The Regional Economic Development Authority loaned the Scott County EDA funds to construct the facility, and we managed the building and sent lease payments to Vasita for the loan. We have not made any payments since the company moved out. However, the Regional Authority works with us to get another tenant back in the facility by actively marketing that building. If another company wants to move into that facility, the Vasita board has to approve the request and new agreements have to be signed. What is the occupancy status of the Crooked Road Tech Center? There is no debt on the Crooked Road building currently, and any revenue is utilized to maintain the building. The building is approximately 60% occupied. Which buildings in Thomas Village are owned by the county or EDA? We do not own any buildings in Thomas Village, but own land in the rear of the subdivision toward the water tank. The county does own 1 building in Thomas Village, and that's the Thomas Village Community Center that is currently leased by 3 Bells Methodist Church. Next, we'll move into Public Works.
One thing that John did cover, I think, all the questions that we have. And I'll say, he's not got an easy job. You want to come up, John, if you, this is good. I know you don't have an easy job. I'm thinking, from my perspective, the incentive package is what draws people in, and I don't think we have a big incentive package. It's based on the county's revenues. Would you agree with that?
Well, the incentive package, we work with the state and regional authority. Usually the regional authority has a great, like building the building for the Teletech was a great example of that. So the county couldn't have done that without their help. They loaned us the money at 0%, and then we were able to lease that back to the organization at a lower cost because their jobs the same as theirs. They want to create jobs and investment in our county and in the region. So that really helped us. So that incentive has helped. The state incentive, how we match those grants, we have to match those a lot of times 50-50, like the Commonwealth Opportunity Fund to the state. We match that with enterprise zone. So the state has the county has a designated enterprise zone, one of 57 in the state, and we're able to use the tax revenue You know, and for example, so Temporary expands, I'll use that as an example. And on that expansion, they will get tax benefit back off of that for, if their wages become, if they're 2.5 times the minimum wage, which the minimum wage has increased, we all know, then they would get 100% of their taxes back for a 5-year period. But they could get tax rebate back for 7 years. And some have got up to 9 years if they stay in that 2.5 times. But it's hard for a company now to get 2.5 times because, you know, that's a higher average wage than it used to be. It used to be $7.25. You could do 2.5 times. Now it's moved up to 11 or something. So.
I just wanted to say that I know you don't have an easy job. I did get one question during break, and that was, who's paying the expenses for the property, the electricity, or anything else that is with the property now since it is vacant?
We continue to do that. We get a little revenue from those 2 properties up front. The businesses that are located there, so we're utilizing that to pay that. You have to keep the lights on and the water on because you got fire suppression system there, and you also got to take care of the property. So you have to maintain that. So you can't just automatically turn the lights off and not have any security there at all. So that's how we keep it up. We've not billed the county for any of that at all. We've been using what we have to get by so we can get another tenant in there. And luckily, the VC does not ask for rent payments, or we wouldn't be able to do that either. Thank you all.
Next, we'll move to Public Works. How are animal control calls handled after hours? Mr. Dingus has already touched on that one. Who is responsible for providing supplies and cleaning the porta potties at convenience centers? We have a contract with a company that services those. We were having some issues, but they got that taken care of with a staff person that they had. So as far as I know, we've not had any issues since that was taken care of. How often are convenience center sites graded and gravelled? Sites undergo grading and graveling as needed. We have a $10,000 budget to take care of all 14 locations. Typically, a load of gravel at each site is around $600, so that's a tight budget to take care of those with. Who is responsible for grading the sites? While it's not particularly their responsibility, our maintenance crew of 2 for general properties takes on the task of grading the sites. We have a small tractor with a box blade that we recently purchased, and they've been able to keep the sites in good shape with that.
Yeah, I just sent Randall a text and asked him what sites they graded in the last month, and he wrote back Carter's Valley, Hilton's 58, Hilton's Antioch and Manville. So they've graded 5 sites within the last month with that tractor.
Any questions there? Okay. Regional jail, what is the funding formula, state versus county? The Commonwealth pays the salaries for all regional jail employees through the comp board. The localities pay $43.61 per inmate per day for operating expenses and $9.27 per inmate per day for debt service. That's the current amounts for this fiscal year. This information was provided by Stephen Clear. He is over the Regional Jail Authority. There's no standard funding formula. The state budget is determined every year. The authority receives reimbursement for salaries and FICA benefits for funded positions. We also receive a per diem for inmates held of $5. And that was the new rate. Starting in December, it was previously $4 for each inmate held awaiting trial, and $15 for each inmate considered state responsible. I have attached a 2023 reconciliation that shows how the actual per diem is determined for the localities. The remaining expenses are divided among the localities based upon actual inmate numbers. This is why some counties are reimbursed and some have to pay at the end of the year. So I did include that reconciliation for you to see what that looks like. We have a amount that the regional jail gives us of inmates they project us to have during the year, and that's what we pay on. So at the end of this year, at the end of they'll do a reconciliation. If we have less inmates averaged for the year, we will receive money back. If we have more inmates than that budget number, we have to pay a reconciliation in the next budget year. So that's how that works. How is the life-saving crew compensated for medical transports? EMS agencies that transport from the Duffield Regional Jail have their billing agencies submit a request to the Regional Jail Insurance Clerk. This is a new process from what had been happening. I talked to the chief at Duffield Fire and Rescue, and they have been paid for all but 3 calls this year. So hopefully this new process is working better for them to get reimbursed.
I hadn't heard that, but that's great. It was a problem for a long time.
I talked to him this summer, Mr. Carter, and he said that they were losing money for transports, so it's good to hear.
Are all regional participants sharing equally in the cost? Yes, we do share equally in the cost because of the way the funding formula is set up. And right now, inmate counts are down region-wide, so that will determine how our budget fluctuates with inmates. This past year, I believe all the localities got money back except for 2, and they had to pay. So the numbers are down jail system wide, not just for Scott County. Why are inmates released onto the streets of Duffield without transportation out of the area when they have finished their sentence? Inmates are released from the facility and they are offered rides back to the county courthouse of their original charge. This has always been offered. Most do not wait for the ride. They either live in a different county than the charge, or they don't want to ride with an authority employee back to that courthouse location. They are free individuals at this point, and we cannot make them go back to the courthouse. A few of the facilities are serviced by county transportation buses and have groups of volunteers that offer rides. The rides from volunteers are usually set before release through churches. Even with rides offered, many will not wait. I guess when they get out, they want out. What are the financial benefits to the county taxpayers for the Scott Services Program with consideration given to jail cost savings versus management and admin cost? To date, the Scott Service Program has saved the county over $4.6 million in jail cost savings. Scott Service enrolls between 50 to 60 participants at any one time and has maintained this capacity throughout its existence. This figure does not take into account the residual savings of those served, given the skills and opportunities to be successful. The program serves the citizens of Scott County by providing resources to combat drug addiction through a supportive opportunity to encourage and empower those living in our community to make lifelong changes for the better. And we have had program graduates come to board meetings in the past and tell us their story of how they were in the program facing jail sentence and how the program helped them to overcome that, and they successfully completed the program and told us how that's impacted their lives. Additionally, another cost savings technique offered to the citizens of Scott County and performed through Scott Service are in the form of capital improvements. They do work well with Public Works. Like I said, we have 2 paid staff, so the extra work, extra people to help with that work is always welcome, especially in the summer when we have all of the mowing to take care of. Usually one of our Public Works employees takes a couple of the Scott program workers out with them to complete all the mowing tasks. They also help at the Scott County Park and Golf Course, at the schools, the Pioneer Center, and the Sheriff's Office and Courthouse. They'll help with janitorial services and various projects. They have had some people in the past that have trade ability. So we've had some really good work from them because they have a specialized skill that would cost us a lot of money otherwise. Conservatively, we estimate these capital improvement cost savings to the county to total between $150,000 to $200,000 per year. They do, it's an alternate sentencing program. It's a diversion. If you are in the program and you don't have a GED, they will let you do GED classes to help with that. So that's helped a lot of the people that's been through the program get their GEDs. That helps give them a step up when they're out of the program to hopefully have successful lives going forward. What is the inmate recidivism rate? The regional jail does not track the rate for their facilities. The Bureau of Prisons reports a rate of 43%, whereas the last reported numbers for DOC were 20.6 in FY18. Scott Service success rate is 55%. To our knowledge, only a handful of successful participants continue to have what they need to remain successful, along with the will and desire of our participants to continue the progress they made while supported in the program. Second, this program offers second chances, and a supportive, encouraging environment are vital to a person's path to recovery and the confidence to make lasting changes. So any questions about any of the jail questions or Scott Service?
Just to mention that Mr. Vickers can probably verify the good job they do when they go out. I know the log house that you have up in Nicholsville, he did a presentation one day, and that was a great job on that. So.
They do a very good job. They're very helpful at the bar.
Since Mr. Kilgore's stayed with us, I'll ask him a question if he feel like you've accomplished something. Ms. Starnes was saying that each inmate is responsible for paying $200 a month that's in this program. Is that the case?
Yes, sir, it is.
Is that working?
Yeah, and it's kind of a built-in punishment of the program. Whereas if somebody, let's say they've committed a crime, they've got a year or something on their guidelines, for example, gives us an opportunity to save the county money. I think it was $43 and a few cents a day on that, but it just gives us another option for that person. But it also, at the same time, they've got that financial punishment as well. They're not just getting off scot-free, and it kind of gives them skin in the game, as opposed to just not going to jail at all. And
So pretty much everybody's paying the $200.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. The only other question I had was, what's your average daily count on people on job sites on a daily basis?
I'd have to ask Mr. Venable on that. I think we were actually supposed to present today, and our administrator had that medical emergency this morning. I could roughly give you a number, but I don't want to be incorrect on that either. So
he's planning to come in another
February.
yeah, February.
So we can cover it then.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next, we had some questions on the sheriff's office, and you have those responses in your packet as well. The first one was, residents are requesting additional patrols in their communities as drug trafficking is on the rise. The sheriff has said that he has 2 deputies in the county on night shift and could use 2 additional deputies. How can this be funded? The sheriff replied that on most nights they have 3 deputies working 12-hour shifts. If a deputy is on an arrest or has someone in custody for mental evaluation, then that only leaves 2 deputies to cover the county. If a deputy is on vacation or on a holiday, the shift only begins with 2 deputies working to cover the county. If one of the above scenarios happens, then a single deputy is left to cover the county and has no backup. The Virginia State Police usually goes home at midnight and are on call-out status only. I feel the casino money could be used to fund these positions. The understanding I have is that Scott County receives a disbursement over a year for their part of the revenue sharing. This money reportedly is to be used for certain categories, and public safety would be one of those. We have a total of 4 rotations, 2 on days and 2 on nights. Ideally, 4 additional officers would help tremendously. We can place 2 on days and 2 on nights, thus making 4 officers on each shift. Are grants available for law enforcement personnel? At times, yes. With grants, certain criteria must be met. For instance, some require an officer to already be a certified police officer, and generally the salary for this is on the lower spectrum. With the low pay rate, an officer who is established at another department will not leave to take a pay cut and also have to worry about the longevity of the grant. Some grants also require a match from the locality. Are school resource officers available to assist outside the school property if needed? SROs are deputies just like the patrol deputies. I do not like to pull a resource officer because in doing so that generally leaves the school uncovered. They work full-time during the week and then are scheduled to cover ball games at the schools. On occasion, a resource officer may take vacation and they'll still come out to do transport to pick up a wanted person in another jurisdiction or state. Do school resource officers receive the same training as other deputies? Yes. SROs must attend the same basic academy, which is now 20 weeks. They must also attend a 1-week school resource officer school. Are school resource officers available to the county during school vacations and holidays? Generally, they are off during these periods as school personnel. However, during the summer, the officers are required to participate in training. Occasionally, they must also assist in other duties. Any questions for the sheriff?
I did have a couple questions for Mr. Eads. Thank you for saying.
You're welcome.
Ms. Darnes has given us a number of services that's provided to the Scotland County school system, and she estimated it's $150,000. And maintenance, you get any maintenance through the school system through their bus shop or
we have oil changes and minor brake replacement or something like that.
have you had them do more work in the past?
Other than that,
Yes.
I think that's about to what they will do.
Would that be an asset for you if they could service your vehicles? What would you estimate the cost savings would be?
We went through it there about a year ago, or 2 years ago, that we was taking it out to, we advised them just whatever their closest garage is, try to get it to them. It was going to be a whole lot more. Our budget decreased more rapidly with doing it that way than doing it through the bus garage.
Do you have an estimate about what it would cost outside?
What was it, $40?
I believe on the oil change, it was anywhere from $40 to $60, something like that. Excuse me. But in the past, years ago, I know the bus garage used to do a lot more in-depth things, more like water pumps or starter, just any of that kind of stuff. But the times have changed now, and I'm sure the school system is the same way. They're doing more with less, and so they've got their hands full. So they've been kind and gracious enough to do the oil changes, stickers, tire rotation, that kind of thing for us.
And it's really convenient for us. Like a garage may put you off a day or two before they'll schedule you in, and those guys is going, they're putting several miles on the vehicle, and a lot of them was running over because they couldn't get in a timely manner. But the bus garage is usually a quick turnaround.
We were just looking at ways to possibly hire more people. And, where's the money come from? And personally, I think this might be one area that might help you.
Yeah, well, it would really help if they had the persons in the garage that's capable to doing a more in-depth repair. But they're tying up their bay for a longer time. That's a problem for them too. If we had something going there, it's going to take a week to get apart, and they've got it broke down there, and it's tying up their bay too. So it's not an easy solution with that one.
As of right now, we may have vehicles that, I know we've had one mechanic that worked on like 3 vehicles at one time of ours out there. And so, that would complicate things for the bus garage as well with the amount of staff they have. Those guys do a good job and they help as well. But, like I said, they do with what they've got.
The other thing, I was just thinking one day, do any of your officers share vehicles?
Not usually. We try to keep spares, in which that's dwindling down. Their cost of repair is sort of getting outweighing the value of the car. I don't know, nobody shares that I know of, unless it's an emergency, one has to get in. We don't have a spare and somebody else goes down at the same time, then we may have to do that.
What's the cost of like a new vehicle that's fully equipped?
I'll have to give you an example of what we've had. So like a Dodge Durango, it's probably going in the neighborhood of, was buying them for like 28,000, and now they're like 34, and then you include everything in them, you're in the $60,000 range time you put all the equipment in.
I'd say 65 at least.
We haven't done it here, but I say the price is quite a bit up.
Let me ask one question. And this has been a couple of years ago, and Stephanie might help. She was on the budget committee, and Frida and you two. You say you have 3 deputies. With this being said, if a deputy's on vacation or on a holiday, the shift only begins with 2 deputies working to cover the county. If one of these above scenarios happens, then a single deputy is left to cover the county and has no backup. Correct me if I'm wrong, but 2 years ago, didn't we approve another deputy to take care of vacations and holidays? Do you remember that?
Not since I've been.
I thought Mr. Starnes or you both came to our budget.
That was a grant position, grant manager and.
Grant manager was separate.
Right, and
Yeah.
But there was
You're talking about the emergency overtime pay.
Yes,
That was in the budget this year for the first time.
I thought it was longer than that.
That was to cover if somebody's out and a deputy has to work their off day, they can get paid overtime instead of comp time. This was the first budget year for that.
That was something to help us manage that.
That's what I was thinking of.
That was to
Okay.
help us manage that. Get somebody to come out and work and
So
pay
give them
overtime.
comp time, because they would have ended up with, they could end up with significant and not be able to take those days, right?
And then you've got to
So-
cover for them to take the
Right.
comp time off,
Yeah,
so it's the same situation.
Same situation.
That's what I remember.
I think that's $10,000. This was the first budget year for that.
Mr. Skeen is right, that just, finding the money, we understand the need, but just finding the money is
Well,
kind of hard.
we manage it, but it's hard for these guys to cover ever with 3 people, even with all of them are there. When they have other calls and they're doing reports, that takes a lot of time, and they're at the office doing reports, and then they get another call. Most of their time is spent, some patrolling, hopefully a lot more, but it's tied up with other issues that, if they get an ECO, that could be a all night, 24 hour, 36 hours. We have to send somebody to sit, so it's a balancing act, trying to keep them safe too, without working with just 2 people or one. I don't like that scenario, and the investigators, they're overwhelmed right now with a lot of crime, the child crimes, and it's happening. It takes up a lot of time to investigate those, and it seems like in the last year or 2 it's just tripled, and it's putting stress on these guys that's doing it. So.
That's one place I want to say you're doing a great job, and commend Atlanta back there too. Every time you go out for a child, probably you have people going with you, don't you, Atlanta?
She can verify how
Yeah.
increases are. Yeah, it's
Really sad.
And just to touch just a little bit on what Mr. Skeen said there, when you go about sharing vehicles, officers are on call as well. If middle of the night something bad happens, you may have to go down to Call Tree and call 4 or 5 out or whatever. Those officers respond from home. I know we had that situation not long ago, and probably half the department was out, and they responded straight from home instead of having to go to to the sheriff's office, whatever, and get a vehicle and all that. They responded straight to the scene, and so it really works out for an officer to have to take home car.
Anything else for the sheriff?
Appreciate what you do.
Thank
job.
you. Next, we have the school system. I believe you all were sending those directly to the school board members.
I think some of us had already contacted our representatives to
Okay.
pass on some information.
And tourism, do you want me to touch on anything here? I know you've already talked to Pam. Okay. Personnel and administration, do all county positions have a job description? yes, all county positions that report to the county administrator do have a written job description. They do have yearly annual performance evaluations. Those are usually in December or January of each year. An employee handbook, we call that a personnel plan. It's just our lingo here. But all new employees do get that. We do not have a human resource director. How are positions compensated, county versus state? Payroll is processed once per month. The pay date is the 25th of each month. The county pays for all payroll expenses up front. Constitutional officers then request reimbursement from the compensation board for themselves and their staff, and those monies are received and deposited at the treasurer's office. County employees are paid by revenue brought in by the county with no funding from the state unless a portion of their salary is grant funded. One that comes to mind right off is the litter control officer. About $20,000 of his salary is grant funded. How are salaries determined, starting with maximum? Starting salaries for county employees reporting to the county administrator are determined by a pay scale that was adopted by the Board of Supervisors in June of 2023. Baker Tilly, who is a professional services firm, did a job market evaluation, market assessment, and they developed a pay plan. There was 10 localities that the Board of Supervisors chose to be compared to, and they sent out the information to those localities and formulated the pay plan based on the responses to that. They came and did a presentation at the board meeting, and that was later adopted, I believe, at the next meeting by the board.
And the reason we did that is we were losing employees by the numbers from the county, from social services everywhere, to Tennessee or the other surrounding counties. We were trying to keep employees because you can't find those people.
911, the trash dumps.
We were losing
the drivers. That's what we were
wholesale,
having
yeah.
problems with.
What is the annual salary progression plan? Cost of living increases for the county employees are at your discretion. A lot of times in the past, if the compensation board employees received an increase, then this board would also do a cost of living increase as well. The personnel plan allows for a merit increase of up to 2% annually for employees that have a satisfactory performance evaluation. Those are recommended by the department director with the approval of myself before the merit increase goes into effect. Which county positions receive the use of a county vehicle? Any licensed county employee can check out a vehicle for county use. We do have a pool vehicle available. Which county positions are authorized a county vehicle for personal use, and are there any restrictions for personal use? County employees aren't to be using vehicles for personal use. How are vehicles acquired, purchased versus leased, new versus used? Vehicles are purchased on state contracts when available. Since the pandemic, this is nearly impossible to do. Like the sheriff mentioned, Durango's $28,000, that was a state contract price. To get any kind of vehicle on state contract now is almost impossible. The last two that's been purchased were by sealed bid. And new vehicles are purchased either in a budget line item or they're financed by the county. We currently do not have a lease program that we're involved with, and all vehicles are owned by the county. Do we have a grant writer? We do not have a grant writer for the county. The county administrator, assistant county administrator, and staff have successfully applied for grants and administered those grants. The sheriff's office does have a position that they use for grant writing and for their accreditation purposes that's funded by the county, but not for the general county. Is there an opportunity for a grant writer on an as-need basis? At this time, my answer would be no, and that's because the greatest amount of writing a grant is the narrative, and you're going to have the staff or department director, ever who's wanting that grant, is going to have to do the majority of that work anyway, because an outside grant writer is not going to understand the county and what needs to be included in that narrative to be successful on the grant. And I did mention, instead of a grant writer, a grant manager might be a big benefit. That would be a person who could write the grant, as well as ensure that all reporting and reimbursements have been completed. And maybe this could be a position that would be shared, not only with the county, but with the constitutional officers as well. And then that workload would probably justify the benefit of having that person. So are there any questions on those items?
Is that pretty much wrap it up? Is there anything? I'll have to say, on behalf of the new members, we tried to pull questions that people had asked us during the campaign, and we did present them to Ms. Starnes, and right away she got on it and got a lot of people involved and got answers, and we appreciate that. And is there any way that we can make this available? You know, we had talked a little bit about that on the website or either through the newspaper.
I'll talk to Lisa about the newspaper, but we can do the website.
But we do appreciate your efforts and your time today. I think what people have heard today, it would take them 12 months of meetings to hear what you presented. So, thanks.
Appreciate all the people that came in today.
Well, Mr. Helms is here. We haven't, did he want to say something? Or?
Tell us how much money you're going to bring in for us.
Any questions for me?
Stephen, he said something about how much money he was gonna bring in. I'm wondering how much money I can keep in my pocket.
My concern, and I've talked to Frida, and she's made me feel better about it, is letting people pay taxes twice a year when we need money in the fall to get started. But she says we're in better shape now to do that than we ever have been.
Right.
So
That's something that I did campaign on, to look at the possibility of twice a year billing. That's something that would take at least a couple of years to implement. So I think it's definitely worth looking at and worth studying. Not something we want to jump into right now, but it's definitely something to look at if it helps the people of the county and it doesn't provide a damaging situation to us financially. But the way to implement that is going to take a couple of years.
is anybody around us in Virginia doing that?
A lot of counties do.
Are they? Okay.
I know Wise County does.
Yeah,
I'm anxious to hear from that because I know it would help our people.
absolutely.
Do you think that we could maybe get it done before the next tax season?
Before the fall this year?
Yes.
No, it would take at least 2 cycles to implement.
But now people can come in and pay taxes
Yes.
anytime through the year. You don't have to wait on your tax bill, right?
A lot of county employees have, and teachers have monthly automatic debits come out
Yes.
to pay
You don't have to
as
wait for
credits
the
that
bill.
go in. You can pay anytime you want to,
Yeah.
any amount you want to. Any other questions?
Congratulations.
Thank you. Glad to be here, glad to be back. Thank you.
Good job, Ms. Thomas.
Yes, thank you.
I tried to jump in and help you there to start with, but you did well.
I knew we'd mess it up.
You did well.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes care of our agenda. And we just need, unless there's any further comments, we need to adjourn to February the 6th at 6 o'clock. Is that correct?
You didn't have a closed session.
Not that I know of.
Floor is open to a motion.
That's always on the agenda in case something comes up.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, whoever made the motion, do we have a second?
I'll say. Go ahead. No.
Mr. Manus, second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed.